Hello and welcome to another chord analysis video with me, Guitar with Yossi. Now, today we are looking at All I Want for Christmas Is You by Mariah Carey. All right, let's check out the chords. Okay, so we are in G major. Those are our diatonic triads, and as you can see, we use a lot of inversions. We use some seventh chords. We use a major 3 chord. We use a minor 4 in inversion, a minor 4 in inversion with a 6th, the 5-7 flat 9 chord, the D9, so the 5-9 sus4 chord. We also use an E7. So lots of other chords are used in this, and we're going to explain how they get used and why they sound good. Okay, so let's look at the intro. So it starts off like this. So with a G, then a G in inversion, then a C, then a C minor in inversion. That goes down to a G in inversion. We've got the B7. Going to the E minor, and back to the C minor in inversion. Then we've got the G in inversion again, the E7, the A minor 7, the D, 7 flat 9, and then we've got our G, E minor, C, D. Okay. So the first part of that chord progression, G, we have the tonic chord. Kind of extend that tonic chord with the second chord, but we're in first inversion. As you can see, our bass note is now B instead of being G. Go to the C chord, which is the 4th, and that bass note goes up to E flat. Get C minor in inversion. The way that C minor fits into the G major key is through modal interchange. So that's how it gets there. We've borrowed a chord from G minor, and it makes it sound very nice. So that chord progression again. So the next part, our C minor / E flat has resolved to a G, but with D as the bass note. Then we have a passing chord, which is the B7. Going to E minor. Now, B7 is a major 3 chord. We don't find any major 3 chords using modal interchange. The reason this chord can be major is it's because it's the 5th chord of E minor. If you were to do a perfect cadence in E minor, it would be B7 to E minor. So we can borrow chords that can be the dominants of other chords. So as you can see, I've written that as a 3-7, or you could think of it as a 5-7 of 6. Okay, so then we have our E minor. E minor is a special chord in G major because it's always the relative minor. And then we have another passing chord, which is this C minor, which is kind of like it kind of pivots us back into G major. So that chord progression again. So that takes us back to the G, our tonic triad in second inversion. Then we have this interesting chord here, an E major resolving to the A minor 7, and then the D7 flat 9. Okay, so our tonic and second inversion, that's pretty easy. That's just a G chord with D in the bass. So now we have this E7 chord. Anytime that we see a seventh chord that seems out of the key, the first thing that you should look for is whether it resolves to another chord. So that E7, it seems to go to A minor 7. Now, if we start on A minor, or A, and we count up 5 notes, we find that it is E. So this one is another secondary dominant. It's actually the dominant of 2. So as you can see, I've labeled it as 6/7 or 5/7 of 2. We get to our A minor 7. And then we have our our D7 flat 9. Now there's a big cliche in jazz called the 2-5-1. So our 2 chord would be A minor, our 5 chord would be D major, and our 1 chord would be G. This is kind of like giving us a perfect cadence at the end from D to G. But also, it gives us the feeling of moving from the 5th of D, because the 5th chord of D is actually A. You could go a major 2-5-1, but the jazzy style is to keep the A minor minor. Now this 2-5-1 is interesting because it gives us a little bit of extra tension with this D7 flat 9. Instead of being just a 5/7 chord, which would be D, F sharp, A, and C, we've added the flat 9 and E flat. That way, when it resolves to the G, this E flat is going to fall down to the D and the G. This D7 flat 9 is only used a couple of times in the song, and it's used to create a lot of extra tension before moving to the 1. There are a few other dominant chords used in this song, and we're going to explore those later. Okay, so that big old 2-5-1 resolves us to the G, and as you can see, we have our basic doo-wop chord progression. E minor, C. So we've ditched all our fun jazz harmony and we've just gone for the basic stuff. One of the classic chord progressions of all time. All right. The verse and the chorus. So the verse and the chorus kind of have exactly the same layout and structure as the intro. But there are a few differences. Let's see if you can figure them out. All right. So our first difference is in the first line. Instead of going from G to an inverted G chord, we have G staying on the same G chord. That then continues to... The other difference, which I haven't labeled here, is that first line actually happens twice. Now, then the chorus starts with the second line of my writing there, with G, going to B7, going to E minor, going to C minor / E flat, then we've got G / D, going to E7, A minor 7, and then instead of the D flat 7 flat 9 that we had, we have A minor 7, going to C minor 6 / E flat, and then resolving to our G, E minor. We have a different chord instead of C. We've got A minor 7. Now that's all pretty easy to use, that stuff, because anyway, let's see what else I've got here. Okay, well, before we move on, let me just talk about the A minor 7. Now, the A minor 7 is basically the same chord as C. Right? A C has C, E, and G. And A minor 7 has A, C, E, and G. So they're almost exactly the same chord, but we've just added a new bass note. Instead of, we have this as our bass note. Now, compared to the doo-wop chord progression, this one, the 1, 6, 2, 5, has a little bit more of a jazzy feel, and it's probably because it does this movement of 6, going to 2, going to 5, going to 1. And these are all fifths. So it always feels like we're having a pseudo-perfect cadence, even though these are minor chords. So E is the fifth of A is the fifth of D, and D is the fifth of G. E minor, A minor 7, D, G. Okay, let's move on to the bridge. So the bridge starts with B7, going to E minor, B7 again, E minor. So that section there, that whole progression is in E minor, which is the relative minor of G major. As we talked about before, this B7 is the 3/7 of G, but really it's tonicizing E minor. So we actually think of it as a 5/7 going to a 1, which is E minor. 5/7, 1. Okay, after that, we use this familiar chord, the C minor / E flat. Okay, so what I've written there is this chord shares E flat with B7. So something that's often overlooked is that the minor 4 chord and the major 3 chord have the same note in them. A B7 has B, D sharp, and F sharp. The 4 chord, the C minor, has C, E flat, and G. Now, just because they're called different names, people often overlook that D sharp and E flat are the same note. Here is B7 as a chord. Here is C minor / E flat. So, because they share this common tone, which is E flat or D sharp, using it to pivot back to G major is really smooth, because we're expecting to hear that note again, and we get to hear it again, but surrounded by some other notes. Anyway, we go back to G with D in the bass, just because this E flat in the bass falls so nicely to that D. We have our E7, which is our 5 of 2. I've written a surprising tonicization of A minor that has more tension than E minor. Let me play it for you with E minor, and let me play it for you with E7. So we have C minor, G, E minor, A, D. Now, let's hear it with E7. So C minor, C minor, G, E7, A minor, our D9 sus4. Okay, so yeah, that E minor being an E major, it kind of reminds the ears. It's like, hey, this is jazzy. This is interesting. It's not just our diatonic triads all the time. We're using 5 of 2. It means that we hear this note, and it elicits some feelings that we probably didn't have before. If it was just this. Anyway, has a really warm, round feeling. Anyway, so we got C minor, G, E7, our A minor 7. It's the beginning of our old friend, the 2-5-1. 2, and then we have this chord D9 sus4, a dominant chord with less tension than D7 flat 9. The D9 sus4 has D, G, C, E, and A. The D7 flat 9 had D, F sharp, C, E flat, and 9. So this one has just an E natural and a G. And this one is going to resolve back to our number 1 chord. And we get to finish with like 4 different playings of the doo-wop progression. Now, one thing I wanted to finish off this video with was a comparison of the chords that resolve to 1. Okay, so as you can see there, we have a bunch of different chords that resolve to 1 in this song. In fact, the D chord never resolves to 1 in this song. Actually, no, it does. It does after the doo-wop progression. C, D, G. So, the D has D, F sharp, and A. Sounds like that. The D7 flat 9 has those notes. Has a bit more of a crunchy feel. The D9 sus4 has these notes. It has, I think of it as more of like a, it's less tense than the, it's more open sounding. We've got our 4 in inversion, minor 4 in inversion, and we have our minor 4 6 in inversion, which adds the A. And they all go back to 1. Now, you see though that 5 going to 1 would be a perfect cadence. So 5-7 flat 9 going to 1 would also be a perfect cadence, and 5-9 sus4 going to 1 would also be a perfect cadence. These 4s going to 1, 4 going to 1, is known as a minor plagal cadence. If it was a major 4, it would be a major plagal cadence or just a plagal cadence, but yeah, minor plagal cadence. It's a very familiar feeling. So these arrows are showing how the notes are resolving. So in a D chord, which is D, F sharp, and A, we have D going to D in the G chord. F sharp is going to rise to G in the G chord, and A is going to rise to B. So it goes from D, and you can hear the resolution there. Now, in the perfect cadence with 5-7 flat 9. Let's see if I'm able to do this with with the guitar. So we've got a D going to D. We've got F sharp going up to G. We have A going down to G. So that's A going to G. We've got C going down to B. We've got E flat going down to D. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to add a G in the bass. That E flat fall into D gives it a really strong movement. Okay. Our friendlier friend, the D9 sus4, has G, so D, G, A, C, and E. I did not say that in the right order, but our D is going to go to D. Our G is going to stay on G. Our A is going to fall down to G. Our C is going to fall down to B. And our E is going to fall down to D. As opposed to our 5/7 flat 9. This is our 5/9 sus4. So those are 3 perfect cadences that you can use really easily. You could also add in the 5/7. Anyway, let's now look at our plagal cadences. So we've got E flat in the bass, we've got G, we've got C. Our E flat is going to fall down to D. Our G is going to stay on G, and our C is going to fall down to B. I find that plagal cadences have a really comforting feeling, like sighing. People refer to plagal cadences as amen cadences, and you can see why. Now we have our minor plagal cadence with the 6th in the chord. So we've got, I like to play this chord like this. So it's E flat, G, C. I've doubled the G, and then I have the A up the top. Minor 6th chords are really interesting because they don't use the 6th that occurs in the minor scale. So if I was in C minor, it would be C, D, E flat, F, G, A flat. So you would expect that a C minor 6 would be C, G, A flat. Oh, sorry. C, E flat, G, A flat, like that. But minor 6 chords actually use the 6 from the major key, so we're actually using an A natural. And it has kind of like a dissonant, but also not dissonant feeling. Like it's strange that it works. Anyway, so we got our A goes down to G. Our G is going to stay on G. Our C is falling to B. And our E flat is falling to D. So almost everything is falling in this chord. I've added some ratings on how tense I feel each chord is before resolving to 1. So D going to G. There's a bit of tension. It's waiting to be resolved. It's not that bad. This 5/7 flat 9 is really tense. It's like, oh, squeezing me. And then resolving to G. Our D9 sus4 resolving to G. It's not too bad. It's a little bit more tense than the 5 chord. Our 4 in inversion. It's pretty tense, but it's not too bad. And then our 4 in inversion with the 6th. You can't end a song there. It has to resolve. Maybe I'd even think of that as a 9 out of 10 in tension. Anyway, that was a bit of a long video. I hope you really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed looking at those chords and understanding how they occurred and why they sound really nice. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, please leave a comment, and I'll make more of these. Have a good one, and I'll see you later. Bye.